Welcome, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you if you're into that sort of thing. This is the regular meeting of the City Council, Clearlake City Council, being hosted here at 14050 Olympic Drive in the city of Clearlake. It is 1800 for those law enforcement in the room, 6 p.m. for the rest of us. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Overton.
Here.
Councilmember Kramer.
Here.
Councilmember Slutin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Claffey.
Here.
Mayor Purdock.
Here. Ms. Overton, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you wouldn't mind remain standing, I'd like to just offer a moment of silence for those who are struggling. We've had several acts of violence through our country and the world. I'm also very grateful for the Davis Police Department, who hopefully stopped a serial killer in their jurisdiction earlier this morning. So if you just keep those families that were victims in your prayer. Thank you all very much. Mr. Floor, any changes to the agenda?
No modifications, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Slutin and a second by Councilmember Overton. All those in favor? Signify by voting in the affirmative or saying aye. All right.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you. Our first order of business is a presentation on Shakespeare on the Lake 2023. Would you like to come up and tell us about that? Thank you so much for being here. That's good. Don't break it. There you go.
Well, I've got some good news. Shakespeare at the Lake's going into its 8th consecutive season, so we're really happy to report about that. I mean, that's inspiring right there if you know that in even the best of times for theater companies, a lot of companies and businesses, to make it past 5 years is a real landmark. And nowadays, after COVID, a lot of theaters have gone dark permanently, and it's really sad to see. I don't know if you're aware of our esteemed neighbors to the north. Oregon Shakespeare Festival is basically pushing the panic button and saying, save the festival. That's how bad it is, even for the best of companies. So we're really grateful to be coming into our 8th year. I think we owe it all to good relationships and a welcoming community. So I wanted to thank you, first and foremost, for having me here and to continue to support this endeavor. I'm John Tomlinson. I'm the founder and director of Shakespeare at the Lake. I teach for Mendocino College and Woodland Community College, both of the Lakeport centers and campuses here. But my being here is really thanks to many others and their hard work and dedication on this particular project to talk to you about. And so I wanted to acknowledge that and thank all of them. I came here today to talk about Shakespeare at the Lake, about what we are, how we add value to the community, when it's happening, and how to get involved. So if anybody's listening in for those things, and that's what you're here for, good, because we want to bring you in. Shakespeare at the Lake started in 2016. It's a co-production between Lake County Theater Company and Mendocino College. We have partnerships with the city of Clearlake and the city of Lakeport, and the Lake County Friends of Mendocino College have always been there to support us. More recently, the Clearlake Chamber of Commerce has come on to really make the move and help us get here, and many, many others that have helped us be where we are. So we're, again, very thankful. It's a completely free offering. The shows have always been free, and that leaves us reliant on the kindness of community in terms of donations, sponsorships, and partnerships. And so we ask a lot. There's a lot of giving involved, and so we hope that we're also hear a little bit some of the value that we offer to the community. We have a sense of connection, an opportunity for collaboration, which is very important for a healthy community, especially after COVID, as people want to get over that time of isolation. On top of that, we're all learning from working together and collaborating, so that shared knowledge really enhances the community as well. There are other kinds of learning, types of literacy that I love to see happen. We've got the type of learning that goes along with the great works of Shakespeare being exposed to our community, so that's some literacy there. There's also a sense of social emotional awareness that's important in literacy now in schools, big programs making that push to make people more aware of human behavior. And I mean, that's what Shakespeare's value always has been, that insight into human behavior. So we're riding that and feeling good about these connections. Another thing we offer, simply put, is a creative outlet to where anyone can join in, and we welcome them. We have new players and new people behind the scene every year, and young and old. They come from all walks of lives, and they get involved on stage, backstage, or further behind the scenes, and we need that. We thrive on that. So we hope people hearing this will come join the fun, or send people along that you think might like it. So that's all kind of nice, feel-good stuff. Want to get down into some statistics to really show you some of what events offer to community and how they impact us. So, did you know? Events and festivals in downtown areas, yep, that's us, in downtown areas can generate up to 20% of annual downtown retail sales, with attendees spending an average of $38.57 per person per event. And that for every $1 spent on destination marketing, there was an average of $9 spent in direct visitor spending. That's pretty nice. And then I got one more here for you on a survey that found that 80% of respondents would rather spend money on experiences than things, which is what we're seeing more and more in our culture, which shows that the consumer spending habits are changing and that events are positioned to be a big part of that. So, good. So that's a little something about us, a little something about what we offer to the community. So by now, everyone's real excited, right? Want to know, how can I get in on this? Good. So let me tell you, there's 3 ways. Be part of the production, performing or backstage. Another way is to donate or sponsor. A third way is to come see it. I need one more way. There's a 4th way. We want help with this, our social media and our marketing, right? So we've got to push this year particularly to get out there on social media. So check us out, Shakespeare at the Lake's Facebook page, and some of the other sites that you might see us on, and like and share everything you see. That'll be really helpful. So good. So the dates. This year we're presenting Measure for Measure. And the audition dates are coming up soon here, May 20th and May 23rd. Those are out at the Lake Center, Mendocino College. And the show dates, July 29th and 30th in Lakeport, Library Park, and then August 4th through 6th here in Clearlake at Austin Park. We accept donations, tax deductible, payable to Mendocino College, and we'll be sure to send someone to pick that up if you need that. Good. City of Clear Lake, I'm very thankful. Thank you once again for allowing me to share and talk about Shakespeare at the Lake. We think it's an important program to our community, and we hope people will come be a part of it and come be part of the good news. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Do you have any flyers? Did you bring any flyers, or do you have flyers? Or
We don't have flyers yet. I have what I had before. I can go get those. Which was just a little save the date sheet. We haven't gotten our art through yet. We have our art. Have some hang-ups on the digital end of it.
Well, when you get that, we'd love to present
you.
and put it up.
Make sure that we have.
Thank you.
In the meantime, I have a few of the small ones I can share.
That's great. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you.
Return, thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 2, proclamation declaring May 2023 as Military Appreciation Month. I'll come down to the podium for that. Do we have any veterans here tonight? Stand up. Any veterans? Thank you, sir.
Oh,
Which branch did you serve in, Ryan?
Air Force, I'm still in as a reservist.
Thank you very much for your service. I got my important. You can't read? Make sure I read it right. So, see if we can do this without breaking it. For Military Appreciation Month, May 2023, whereas the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness enumerated in our Declaration of Independence, secured by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and enjoyed by every citizen of the United States, are a direct result of the members of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas the sacrifices made by the members of the United States Armed Forces and the family members who support them preserve the liberties that enrich our nation, our state, and our city. And whereas citizens have a proud history of service in the United States Armed Forces in both times of peace and times of war. And whereas many citizens of the city of Clearlake continue to serve on active duty and in the National Guard and in the reserve components of the United States Armed Forces. And now there it be proclaimed that the city of Clearlake City Council does hereby wish and recognize and honor all members of the United States Armed Forces, past and present, as well as their families, for their service and sacrifice, and hereby designates May 2023 as Military Appreciation Month in the city of Clearlake. Further, we encourage all citizens to show their gratitude and appreciation by the display of flags and ribbons during the designated period. Thank you all very much. Signed and presented by the City Council for the City of Clearlake. And I'd just like to shout out, I was a little late tonight because I got a call from my son who's serving in the U.S. Marines, calling in from Okinawa to let me know what he's doing. So that was a welcome call. Thank you for your service. And next, Chief Hobbs, you have a presentation. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I wanted to take a moment to thank the City Council for their decision in July of 2021 to offer the college tuition incentive program for members of the Police Officers Association and the Middle Management Association. It was very generous and thoughtful by providing this financial support and encouragement for our employees to continue their education. You're not only investing in the individual employee, but also in the future of our police department. Tonight I want to provide you an update on how the program has gone so far. There's not too much to add on it, but we have 4 employees working on completing their degrees currently, and we have 1 employee who's with us tonight who in March finished his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. So I'll have him come up here real quick. Officer Eagle, if you can come on up. Here's your degree. We're not giving it to him, but we want to get a photo with him tonight with that. And thank him for taking the time to get that done and learn some more to help him in his career with the city.
Outstanding. Congratulations.
Congratulations, yep.
That will definitely help you in the promotion department.
No, just thank you. I mean, 4 it cost me almost nothing to do it. And so, yeah, it was difficult at times, but in retrospect, having the assistance, being able to do it is great for future for me. So I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
We appreciate you.
No
It
problem.
didn't cost you anything. It cost you a lot of time and away from your family, a lot of dedication.
sure.
So thank you.
Yeah.
In retrospect, yes. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Been there, done that. Thank you, Chief. Don't run away. Don't run away. presentation on public safety. Peace officers, we can all come up here. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I know for all of us on city council and for a very grateful city, grateful state, grateful country, we want to honor this week as Peace Officer Week or Police Week 2023. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving the communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Clearlake Police Department. Whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, more than 22,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made that ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the long line of duty. Whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are now engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas on May 14th is designated a Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags will be flown at half-staff. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Clearlake formally designates May 14th through May 20th, 2023 as Police Week in the City of Clearlake and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and the communities across the nation. Again, presented by the City Council. I just had the honor of reading it. Thank you, Chief.
Just briefly, I want to talk about and thank the members of our department for all the work they do. It's definitely a dangerous job. Everyone goes out there every day putting their life on the line, putting themselves in potential harm to their family by them, something happening to them. I'm definitely very grateful for all the staff we have, the hard work they do, their commitment to this agency, and what they do for us. And it's definitely an important time of the year for us to recognize the hard work that they're all doing out there and the law enforcement throughout the country, and obviously the people that have died in the line of duty or been seriously injured. So it's a good time to recognize them and show support for them.
Yes, later this month, names of the fallen California peace officers will be added to the California Peace Officers Memorial, which rests in front of the state capitol in Sacramento. And there are far too many names being added this year. We always pray that not another name would be added, but sadly they do. Next, I'd like to move on to a presentation for Public Service Appreciation Week. Public Service Appreciation Week, dated May 7th through the 13th, this year, 2023. Whereas our nation's progress has been long fueled by the efforts of selfless citizens who come together in service to follow Americans to change our country for the better. And during Public Service Recognition Week, we honor those who dedicate themselves to ensuring Americans' promise rings true in every corner of our country, and we recommit to upholding the values they fight for every day. And whereas Americans are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, and county and city levels, including public works, planning, building, administrative services, and finance department employees. These unsung heroes do the work that keeps our city working. And whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Day in and day out, they provide the diverse services demanded by all American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City of Clearlake City Council does hereby designate May 7th through the 13th, 2023, as Public Service Appreciation Week in the City of Clearlake, and we encourage all citizens to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of government employees at all levels, federal, state, county, and city. Thank you very much, presented by the City of Clearlake. Okay, thank you for your patience for those presentations. Now we'll move on to item F, public comment. Public comment is a time for any member of the public to address the city council on any matter not on tonight's agenda. We do need to follow the Brown Act with limited exceptions. We cannot answer you or discuss any items that you bring forth, but we are happy to listen to your concerns, complaints, or accusations, or saying good things about our staff and the work that we're doing here in the city of Clearlake. So the time for public presentation, public comment is set at 3 minutes. I have one request to speak, and that's from Leslie Shedrick. Leslie, please come up. She wants to talk to us about police and animal control. Thank you for being here.
My name is Leslie Sheridan. Try not to get upset here. I'm talking about anything but police, peace. I live at 4246 Mullen Avenue, and I have had months of dog barking at a neighbor's house next door. The neighbor is a known meth and fentanyl dealer. He has had dogs out there for months that go on and on and on. I'm exhausted. Last night, 3 different times. I mean, it's gotten over the top, and the police are not doing their job. That man is not doing his job, and animal control is not doing their job. And animal control knows that they are hired by the city of Clearlake to do their job, and they won't do their job. Why? Because that's who their bread is buttered on. They know exactly, and this has gone on, and when I call, the police come, the dogs are either barking or they're not barking, and they're not barking when I arrive. Well, can you count on the fact that you're on the phone and the dogs are going to be barking by the time the police come? You have no idea. So, it's just going on and on and on, and it's getting absolutely nowhere. And finally, the other day, the gate of this property is open. Very rarely do you ever see anybody there. The gate is open, and I'm thinking, great. The police and the animal control say, we can't get in there, we can't get in there. And, unless we can get to the people, we can't take the dogs out of there. And Sergeant Harden even said one day, we're going to take them out the next day. Didn't. No promises. And then you get police officers who say, oh, we've been sitting out here for 10 minutes and we didn't hear them barking. And you know that you were sitting in there listening to them barking. And it just stopped 5 minutes, and they say they're there for 10 minutes. The police lying has gone on forever and ever and ever. Last year, the code department tried to keep me from getting heat in my house. Finally, Chief White, he and I had our issues, but he's a reasonable individual, and when I told him I know about the statute to report dishonest officers, he got on right away. He says, hang on, I'll go to the code enforcement and I will get on this. And he took all those lying people on the code enforcement and said, you got to get her heat and stop lying. And he did. He got it done. But the lying history goes on and on and on. It just go on and on. He says, oh, I'm sorry, you've got to do a case, sue the landlord next door to you. The landlord is a meth and fentanyl dealer. I am not going to have to do that. I was told the exact same thing several other times by this department. You need to go and sue them. I had years go on with another neighbor next door on my other side. Same thing, animal control and police not doing their job. Finally, I had to sue because I've got it all on file, tons of files and files. And they didn't do their job. And so they say, oh, you're going to have to sue. I finally had to sue. I don't want to have to sue a drug dealer. I don't want to sue a drug dealer.
The 3 minutes has expired, but could you talk to Lieutenant Peterson, who's at the rear of the room?
Yeah.
He's been paying attention,
It's
I'm sure.
I have epilepsy, and seizures are triggered by lack of sleep, loss of sleep, and stress. And I've just had it, and I know exactly who I will be suing if this is not handled.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. That was the one that I had turned in. I see some hands up. Would you like to speak at public comment? Come on up, please. If you could just introduce yourself and.
My name is Jean Yanich. I own the property at 15515 33rd Avenue in Clearlake. I have had an issue at this property for 3 years with the adjoining neighbor, Terry Davis. He lives at 15523 33rd Avenue. He allows transients to reside on my property, dump trash, abandon cars, and has been captured on code enforcement video admitting to this. Yet I am the one who gets fined and penalized and ends up paying to remove the stripped cars and clean the debris. After numerous complaints to code enforcement, I have not had any callbacks or help. I have been told it is a civil matter. So last year, I took Terry Davis to small claims court, winning a $10,000 judgment. The judge recommended I fence the property to keep these transients off the property. I've spent $5,000 on building a new fence and several $1,000s on cleanup and car and debris removal. Now I am faced with the transients tying tarps and tents to my fence and leaning up against my property, which is the city's property. When speaking to the city about this, I was told Public Works would clean up the area. That has never happened. When myself and other neighbors complain to the city that they are having warming and cooking fires in the street, the city says, don't call the police, call the fire department. When they defecate in the street, the police say, don't call us, call environmental health. I am tired of being passed off and no responsibility being taken by the city. I've spent 3 years trying to resolve this matter. I've had zero help. I have had some help with from Chief White, from the police department, and minimal help from code enforcement. I want this trash and debris removed from my fence as soon as possible. Perhaps habitual offenders like Terry Davis should be handled more harshly. Also, the police department's motto of partnership with the community should be changed to something more appropriate, because they're not working with me in any sense of the word. They just are passing me off. So I don't know, you can't answer me, so there's no resolution. So I guess I'll just keep coming here every 2 weeks until the property gets, the city owns this property, gets cleaned up.
Thank you for your comments. Next, come on up. If you could also introduce yourself.
My name is Kay Lopez, and my concerns are over the Clearlake Animal Shelter again, North Bay Animal Services. Apparently, dogs are still not going to the vet since February. There's dogs with worms, dogs becoming skeletal, unaltered and unvaccinated dogs are being handed out to rescues with the promise of being fixed, but no availability, they say, for the dog to be fixed. But other rescues don't have that problem for some reason. So these dogs need to be checked. Honestly, Ryan Peterson should start looking at records for fosters and adopters and speak to them about the sick and unfixed animals given to these rescues with the promise of being fixed, and then it doesn't happen. Bite reports involving children are not responded to. Injured animals are not responded to. And I would expect better from a shelter that knows they're being investigated. This is unacceptable. How long are these dogs going to be made to suffer before a vet goes in there and takes a look? They're a mess in there, and they need to be looked at. And I'm sure you can't answer when was the last time a vet did go in there and check out these dogs. Apparently, it hasn't been since February. I'm really not understanding why anybody would want to continue with a contract when you have all these laws and codes violated. So I thank you for your time, and I'll be back in 2 weeks.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to speak or address the council at this time? I'm glad to see you're a little more mobile.
A little more mobile, yeah, thank you
Yeah,
very much.
you bet.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Margaret Garcia. I'm a Clearlake resident, and I just felt inclined to get up, as I do sometimes, and back this lady up who is here trying to speak for these animals. Now, I personally have not ever gone to the shelter. I'm not really clear on it, but I'm sure that there's something that needs to be done by all you folks here. I'm sure you have animals, you have pets at home, and certainly wouldn't want those pets to be suffering. So I'd certainly like to see something happen here that can help the situation. And, you know, I'll be back too, and I'll probably speak with her, hopefully. But, yeah, I'm just hoping that something positive gets done. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone on Zoom wanting to address the council?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. At this point, I will close public comment and move to the consent agenda. Do we have anyone wanting to pull an item from the consent agenda? Then do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Slotin. All those in favor? Say aye and vote, or nay and vote.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you very much. Then we will move on to our business. Our next item is H9, discussion and consideration of an amendment to the MOU with Adventist Health Clearlake for operation of the Hope Center.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, so you can go ahead and come on up, Colleen, but a brief introduction. So the council will recall that in 2020, we entered into MOU with Adventist Health and Hope Rising for establishment of the Hope Center, which is a facility to provide housing and support of the homeless and at-risk population in the Clearlake area, and the city provided $500,000 toward the establishment of that facility. There's some operational changes at foot that are resulting in the requested change to the MOU tonight, which would best be described by the president and CEO of Adventist Health Clearlake. So I will turn it over to her.
Thank you. Good
Welcome,
evening.
Colleen.
Thank you.
Welcome, Marilyn.
Good evening, gentlemen and women. My name is Colleen Osawa-Pisakun. I'm the president of Adventist Health Clearlake, and I'm here with Marilyn Wakefield. She's our director of integrated care and social impact. And we're here again to talk to you a little bit about the MOU that was created with the City of Clear Lake, Adventist Health, and Hope is Rising. Hope is Rising has been the agency that's been running Hope Center for the last couple of years, since July of 2018, I believe. And they have asked us now to take over the management and running of Hope Center. When we looked at the ability for us to do this, there is one caveat that we would ask that we could change. In the original MOU language, it states that I apologize, I should have brought my glasses, that we will not turn this property into an Adventist Health clinic or facility that's solely. What we want to be able to do with this property is to continue to run it as a transitional housing, but we do have the ability now through the CalAIM dollars from the state of California to bill for not medical treatment services, but other services that we've been rendering to the population all along. So Marilyn, if you want to just take a quick minute to explain what that means and why we're asking for this change to have that removed from the contract.
So I'm Marilyn Wakefield. The billing that will happen, that is now allowed under CalAIM, is for
recuperative care for someone who's coming out of the hospital and needs some time, is not at a high enough medical risk to go to Restoration House, which is in Lower Lake. They could come to the Hope Center. And also for housing navigation and housing sustainability for people once they're housed. So these are things that we've already been doing. It's just now that we're able to bill for them. And we just want to make sure that there's no conflict over the language. And we're not turning it into a clinic. We will not be providing medical services there, but we would like to be able to bill for the things that are reimbursable through CalAIM. And they're considered the social determinants of health.
And part of our request for this is that we want to make this, we want to make Hope Center sustainable for the long run. And in order for us to do that and be able to maintain payment of staff and all of the, operational costs, we would like to be able to bill for these services that we can do now. So that is our request. Do you have any questions for us?
Councilmember Overton.
Okay, so you're basically, it is going to stay as a transitional housing. You're just wanting to bill for people who are coming out of hospitalizations or?
Yes,
So-
and who are participating in the program there. And we do take people from Sutter, we take people from Tribal Health, we take walk-ins who.
VA.
Yeah, VA.
Okay, so I'm just going to say this out. So what I can see in the future is that this is really going to become a medical facility, transitional housing, and that the homeless are going to be left out in the ring.
No, that's not our
you-
intention at all.
This may not be your attention, but I'll almost guarantee you that will be what happens. Because in order to, funding is going to be always the number one thing that you guys will be looking at. So I'm trying to figure out, we have a house in Lower Lake already, and why do we need to turn this one into basically the same thing?
So this home is not actually the same thing. The home in Lower Lake, which is Restoration House, and please feel free to correct me if you'd like to, or you need to. That home is actually a higher level, which is for people who really need assistive care. We have certified nursing assistants that work there that help for people who are transitioning from being in the hospital or in the ED and can't quite take care of themselves yet to go home. So that house in Lower Lake, Restoration House, is a very different home. Hope Center is, as it designed, a transitional housing for homeless people, and we have been surrounding them with care historically, and will continue to do so. We do so out of, Marilyn's team has done it regardless of whether some of these people are in Hope Center. CalAIM just this year, which is a Medi-Cal program, is allowing us now, they're realizing how important it is to support our most vulnerable population when they need extra help to get back on their feet. So they're now willing to say, okay, we will pay you to do your housing navigation, which is something we've been doing for years, but we've not been able to get reimbursed for. And they'll give us a small stipend for the time that they're housed there. What we could look at is a slightly different language for the MOU if you're very concerned about us turning it into a clinic, a medical clinic, and we can put some verbiage in there. But we really are asking for the ability to be able to bill for these services that are that wraparound care, so we can ensure we can continue operating Hope Center.
Not so much that is that I don't want everybody that's going to come into the center to be coming out of the hospital. I mean, I think.
The center is not.
Yeah.
No.
So, well, that's kind of what you just said. They're coming out of the hospital. They may not qualify for the Lower Lake one, so they're going to go into this facility.
Well, we also take people who are currently on the street and who come in for services and ask to be considered for housing. I also want to point out that we signed a 15-year agreement with Partnership Health when they gave money to build Hope Center that we will keep it as transition. Now have completed 3 of those years.
And if I could also jump in, the MOU with the city also requires that Adventist Health commits to operating the facility for 15 years, consistent with that MOU with Partnership Health Plan. It specifically still will say continues to be used for housing and support of the homeless and at-risk population in the Clearlake area.
If I might interject, I don't see any other questions from council members or comments. Do I have any others?
No,
If I could just
I
offer a summation.
Colleen and-
I'm no longer affiliated with Adventist Health. I've gained employment elsewhere. But during my time there and as serving as a director for community well-being, this was something I was working on and in communication with Partnership Health, because this was a significant improvement to the coverage that they offered through this new CalAIM program, because they saw the benefit of not discharging someone from the hospital as inpatient or even just as a patient in the ED to the street, because they were continuing to come back for the same problems. So Hope Center was created, unlike Restoration House, to be a low barrier entry level for people who were living on the street or poorly housed that could get a benefit. This, now with the CalAIM funding, affords Adventist Health better services that they can now offer to the residents at Hope Center, because there is a stipend coming in, I believe, for nightly recuperative care and recovery.
And then the housing navigation and
Right.
some of those social services, there's a.
And that was something we had worked with Partnership Health, Dr. Kubota and his team out of their Santa Rosa office. So, but it had no intention of changing the operations of Hope Center. And that's what I heard from you tonight. The continuation operations will continue.
Yes, sir.
And that's what's stated in the MOU.
Correct.
And we anticipate being self-supporting within 12 months of when we start building.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Just a quick comment. So that will make it self-sustainable for at least the 12 years that you still have to comply with the MOU?
Yes, that's our goal, yes.
Given that CalAIM continues, which we hope it will.
Sometimes those programs are hard to sunlight anyway, so.
And that's how it started, was a change, and it, hopefully will be sustainable.
Thank you.
Thank you so
for your
much.
time.
Any comments? Come on up if you'd like to address council. I'll open this up to the public. Madam Clerk, if there's someone in Zoom, we can take them next.
Hi, Cheryl Ullman, City of Clearlake, also part of Continuum of Care. And I'm just wanting to make sure that they go through the coordinated entry process and that we don't jump people who have also been waiting and living on the street just because there's a slot being held for somebody coming from the hospital. I know that it's very difficult to have the hospitalized people coming in, but we also have homeless people that are on waiting lists that we don't have enough housing for at this point, and I'm very concerned
I think Ms.
that.
Wakefield can address your concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, would you like to come back up so you can be on the mic?
And
Thank you,
those are
ma'am.
my concerns too, is that the homeless people are going to be kind of pushed aside because somebody's coming out of the hospital, and that's originally not what this was meant for.
Right. So with the coordinated care, there is a prioritization that happens based on the interview that's done with each person as they're put into the coordinated care system. And so that priority list then means that whoever is at the top has the highest level of vulnerability. And so those folks are the ones who are targeted for housing first. And so if somebody's at Hope Center, they need to wait until their turn is there for housing. And we also now have the Pathways Hub system, which is a countywide care management system that it has been funded through a grant with Lake County Behavioral Health. And the Pathways Hub and the coordinated entry system works together to make sure, and it's independent of Adventist Health, make sure that the people are being prioritized in the correct way, and that anybody who's being referred to another agency, all that information is tracked in the Pathways Hub so that we know that the folks who are at the highest need or highest vulnerability have received the help first.
Councilmember Kramer.
So if I heard you correctly, Adventist Health does not make the choice of who has a priority. It's made outside of Adventist Health.
It's actually made by it's an algorithm within the coordinated entry system that was adopted by our county in compliance with HUD. HUD has that requirement. And so those, once you put their vulnerability information in, and there's a whole intake, once that is put in, then it automatically classifies people as far as, who's number 1 as the highest priority and who's number 20.
Now, is that new, or has that been in place the last 3 years?
It's been in place for about the last 3 years. There's only a few agencies that are using it, and we're trying to get more agencies to use it. And that's happening now that we have the CalAIM funds for housing.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Just a quick, Dr. Wakefield, if you wouldn't mind, what other housing programs are available within Lake County beyond what Adventist is providing with Restoration House and Hope Center?
We have the warming center that's now operating up in the old juvenile detention center. And we have Thule House, which provides temporary housing for women and their children who need addiction treatment. And then we have the Nest, which is with Redwood Community Services, and it's for short-term transitional housing for young parents. And they have age categories from, I think it's 18 to 24. And then there is the domestic violence shelter, which provides temporary housing for people who are coming out of domestic violence.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Overton.
Sorry, and I know I'm going to be just your little pain for you. So my concern here is okay, they're going to get entered in this system, and anybody that has a medical thing, we know is going to go to the top of the list, which, again, will take the people who have been being helped there now, homeless people that are just not medically inclined, are going to be thrown down to the bottom of the list. Because if you're putting it into the system, somebody coming out of the hospital that does not have a place to live is going to become priority. We all know that's how it's going to work.
That's not part of the criteria. What the criteria looks at is trauma that you've been through in the last 2 years, and how long you've been homeless. Do you have children, minor children, and do you have a mental illness? So those are the criteria that set the bar as far as where you're going to end up.
Okay, we'll see, I guess.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Any hands raised in the Zoom room?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Then I'm going to close public comments on this item, bring it back to council for deliberation.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no more deliberation, I'd like to make a motion to approve Amendment 1 to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Clearlake, Adventist Health Clearlake, and, well, I guess the Hope Rising's not in there anymore, but Lake County for the funding of Hope Center facility improvements.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Slotin. All those in favor? I need to refresh. There we go. Aye.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your comments. Moving on to item 10, discussion and consideration of interim policies and procedures manual for tribal consultation. Mr. Flora.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, I'll give a very brief introduction. In October of last year, there were some tribal consultation policies that were brought before the council. At that time, the council asked for the policy to be brought back after additional time for the tribes to respond. Our consultant prepared a different policy framework that was much more simplified just as an interim while we move forward with a longer, more collaborative process. In this time, well, up until, I guess, today, we never received any comments back from any of the tribes related to the policy. But, so the consultant that we've hired to help us with this and a number of other issues is Lisa Westwood. She's on a flight. She wasn't able to be here tonight, but she did record a little video overview, so I'd like to play that now, and then we'll try to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Give me just 1 second.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for making time for me to present to you some materials that I developed for the city. I apologize for not being able to be here in person as I'm currently on a flight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lisa Westwood. I am the Director of Cultural Resources for eCorp Consulting. I am your consultant and working under a contract with the city to provide support in your tribal consultation obligations. I am a registered professional archaeologist with 28 years of professional experience, and I have previously developed standard operating procedures and consultation guidelines for a number of cities and counties in California. Last year, City Manager Alan Flora reached out to me to request some assistance in developing some tribal consultation guidelines to help staff navigate an increasingly complex yet very important process that is woven into the city's discretionary approval process for projects. To be brief, the city is charged by the state of California to consult with culturally affiliated Native American tribes as part of environmental review. These requirements apply not just to city projects, but also to private projects under the approval authority of the city. A few of the laws that require such consultation include Assembly Bill 52 for projects undergoing review through the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, Senate Bill 18 for the adoption or amendment of a general plan or a specific plan or for the dedication of open space, Assembly Bill 168 for projects taking advantage of the streamlined ministerial approval process allowed for under Senate Bill 35, and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act for city projects that will receive federal funding, permits, or assistance. In brief, these laws require that the city take into account the effect that your projects or projects under your jurisdiction will have on tribal cultural resources or traditional cultural properties in advance, and seek ways through consultation to avoid, minimize, or mitigate the adverse effects in that order of priority. The city identified the need to develop tribal consultation guidelines to guide staff in navigating this increasingly complex regulatory environment. However, protocols are only effective when they actually translate this complicated regulatory setting into an understandable set of procedures, and when they offer clarification and standardization of implementation that the regulations themselves fail to provide. The use of clearly defined procedures that ensure consistency and fairness to all parties is critical. Additional goals in developing the protocol are that they are developed in consultation with culturally affiliated tribes associated with the city, and they incorporate important touch points for new city employees and elected or appointed officials to receive training regarding the guidelines and best practices on tribal consultation. Now, the development of formal tribal consultation guidelines requires the participation of culturally affiliated Native American tribes, but such guidelines do not absolve the city from its obligation to consult under applicable law on a project-by-project basis. Because the city acknowledges the time and the effort involved in developing final formal guidelines, and in consideration that the projects will be proposed for approval before those guidelines are finalized, there is a parallel need to establish a set of tools for city staff to use to comply with the procedures in existing state law in the meantime. To that end, the city staff requested that I assemble an interim set of operating procedures for your consideration. These interim guidelines are composed of tools such as tracking forms, flowcharts, template letters, and compliance verification forms that will provide interim guidance to city staff until the final guidelines are adopted in consultation with the tribes. Those final guidelines will further go and establish expectations for the consultation process and its outcomes, tribe-specific procedures to help ensure that consultation is timely, meaningful, and compliant, and may include development of standard conditions or mitigation measures that could be used in future projects. With your approval, these interim guidelines will be put into place immediately. Meanwhile, the city will initiate consultation with culturally affiliated tribes to kick off consultation on the final procedures. Guidelines will be drafted and eventually released for public review before finalized and sent to both the Planning Commission and back to the City Council. Following the adoption of the final guidelines, city staff will be trained in these new protocols. I applaud the city for its acknowledgement of the importance of tribal consultation and development of guidelines to help ensure that future projects are not only compliant, but respectful of the rich and ancient heritage of the Clearlake area. I look forward to receiving your input, and I invite you to direct any questions to the city manager, who will coordinate with me on any responses. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Any questions for staff? Mr. Slotin?
Alan, do you know how many?
Can you turn your mic on?
How many of these guidelines or interim guidelines have ECOR prepared so for other cities? Do you have a number or a number of?
I mean, I really don't. I mean, I know there's a number that Lisa's worked with specifically. I'm sure there's other consultants that are doing similar type stuff. You know, some lead agencies that have a lot more staff may have, developed them on their own, but.
So this is not something new that Lisa has done? This is something.
No. She's been putting these guidelines together for a number of years, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before I open it up? Seeing none, I will open it up for public comment on this item. Anyone wishing to address council on this item is welcome to step to the podium. Seeing none, are there any hands raised in Zoom?
There is one hand raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor, and that would be Dino Beltran with the coordination.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beltran, you're welcome to speak to the council.
Good evening, City Council. How are you tonight?
Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
You betcha. Forgive me, I'm getting over COVID, so my voice is a little hoarse.
No problem.
I don't have too much to go over. As far as this document is concerned, we do support the adoption of the interim guidance. This is a really good step forward. We appreciate the city on working on this, very much so. We also did submit some comments to further improve the interim guidance. We expect to discuss in a true government-to-government consultation with the city. Our comments are just helpful. We believe they're helpful points to make things more specific, probably a little more pragmatic and practical, and hopefully maybe a little bit more clear, especially in regard to dealing with the tribe and tribal cultural resource issues. The Quay Nation, as you know, has a very good history of working well with, local, state, and governments. For example, we have the MOA with the county. That MOA won the 2016 Governor's Historic Preservation Award. The city of Clearlake and the Quay Nation also have an MOA, as you know, recognized as only the 5th one in state history between a tribe and a municipality. And it is also mentioned in the film called Saving the Sacred, bringing some meaningful enlightenment to what's been established from the beginning between your city and our tribe. The MOAs are really a positive example of where we've been. And this guidance, it can really help us to get where we want to go in the future. But we see that we need to get some work going together when it comes to tribal cultural resource protection and in continuation of the spirit and intent of those MOAs, which are still in effect. Our future is very collaborative, we hope. A respectful relationship with the city that is protective of our ancestors and the tribal cultural resources and compatible with sustainable development. We look forward to working with the city and its consultant, Lisa Westwood at ECOR, for development of more substantive comprehensive guidelines for tribal consultation and addressing tribal cultural resources through the Appendix O update. There's a rate policy. Should I go ahead and address that now?
You're welcome to, sir, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll just need about the same amount of time. I have like about 8 bullet points, all short. The proposed rate policy is a bit problematic. Well, we were not asked for input, so we do not support it. We do urge the council not to adopt the interim rate policy tonight and to instead develop a rate policy that is in true consultation with us. The rate policy is problematic because it's not consistent with current best practices and other issues that are of like professional issues in the same regard. For example, let's point to the 2021 Caltrans policy, but Caltrans just updated its tribal monitoring policy and just last year, so if you're going to adopt it, please incorporate 2022. The city can contact Caltrans and get that current rate for tribal consultation. The city is going to reference a state agency guidance document. It should use the most current version. We work with these issues every day. We can be a resource for you if you just ask us. We ask that you not adopt this interim policy tonight and instead ask to work with Lisa Westwood and whomever the city decides and designates on a rate policy that works for the city and the tribe so that things can help go smoothly. Lastly, this is why tribal monitoring is important for a cultural perspective. It's just one mitigation measure that helps protect against possible impacts of tribal cultural resources during construction. It is the last line of defense against destruction of something sacred. That'll also be helpful for the city. If something very sacred or sensitive is encountered during construction, our monitors can help the city deal with it in a very meaningful way, in a respectful way, and most importantly, quickly. And that'll save the city money in the long term. We look forward to working with the city to establish a better rate policy and a smoother process. In the alternative, the city does adopt the interim rate policy tonight. It should change the 2021 citation to 2022. And last thing, we look forward to the government consultation on this rate policy before it's final. Mayor Purdock, I would like to go ahead and commend you for addressing and showing admiration and respect for the fallen officers. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's a respectful thing to do. I mention this because all we're trying to do as a tribe is try to respect our fallen ancestors who were merely killed in genocide and slavery for merely being human beings. And we're asking your assistance and your collaboration for us to also honor those that we have lost for centuries and are unable to do so in a meaningful way because of these lack of policy. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Beltran. I don't know if any council members have any comments or questions of you, if you wouldn't mind staying on the line. Any questions?
I will.
Can you hear me, Mr. Beltran?
Yes, I
Okay.
will stay on.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Very good. Seeing none, I will open this up for any other additional public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any additional hands raised?
There are no additional hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor. However, we did receive an emailed public comment, which I can read aloud.
Yes, please. Thank you.
The emailed public comment on this item comes from Aaron McCarrick, who states, "Thank you to city staff, the city council, and the regional tribal governments and representatives for continuing to work toward a proactive consultation process. It's great leadership that could be duplicated in other public and private sectors. I would also note that this item could fulfill goal number 4 of the strategic plan, improve the image of Clearlake, as any efforts towards building bridges and embracing cultural understanding is beneficial for a city and its image. I have 4 items for public comment. 1, if this interim policy is not the most complete and does not have the tribal feedback needed, then maybe there should be a specific timeline to come back and address it at a further council meeting if the council decides to adopt it this evening. Will it remain a working document until the next to-be-determined council meeting. 2, as the City of Clearlake Planning Commission is crucial in determining the adoption of mitigated negative declarations and other CEQA documents, it seems like there should be a step included to brief the Planning Commission on the process. When decision makers are brought in too late or with a skewed amount of information, it does not give those decision makers all the pieces to make a correct or complete determination. This is especially important as the Planning Commission approves what impacts to tribal cultural resources in the tribal cultural resources section of the CEQA document. 3, is staff, government official, and contractor training part of the mitigation measures? On one of the sample documents, it shows contractor awareness training as one of the required mitigation measures, but it is not clear if this will be included in the adopted mitigation measures for the City of Clearlake. If people are going to be making determinations on what is important to tribal cultural resources, it is important to understand the history and context of tribes, tribal cultural resources, and the history and application of the law. 4, in the spirit of compromise and open conversation, especially in public documents, staff reports should be free of bias. And that concludes Ms. McCarrick's comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate you reading that in the record. Any other comments at this time? Very good. I'm going to close the public comment section on this item and bring it back to council for further deliberation. I do not. Could you want to state that on the record?
I see there was an email sent to the city clerk from Holly Robinson. That probably should be reflected in the record also.
Well, it could be reflected that, that was forwarded to the city council, and hopefully you've had a chance to.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Claffey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding Ms. McCarrick's email, item number 3, I think I'd like to just hear the answer to that as well. Will staff, government official, and contractor training be part of mitigation measures?
Well, I mean, that level of specificity isn't included in the interim guidelines. I don't know if Ms. McCarrick reviewed them or not, but yeah, I mean, it is our practice now to include cultural sensitivity training for contractors, employees that are involved in ground disturbing activity. So, I mean, it was back in October when you saw the more detailed example that we had initially hoped to adopt, and that was largely based on a similar policy that was put in place in Roseville, but there would be more of that level of specificity likely in the full set of guidelines, but that's not part of this one right now, just because that requires a little bit more collaboration with culturally affiliated tribes. Let me read down through the rest of this. The other was just kind of an editorial comment at the end, I think, rather than a question.
Yep. And then Ms. Roberson sent over some suggested edits. I think several of these may be considered to be included in the final document. A couple I just wanted to touch upon here because I appreciate she took the time to put this together. So one was around privacy concerns. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's anything in the policy here. Is that something that we can consider and implement in the future?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we understand the obligation related to confidentiality on certain records related to tribal cultural resources, and I'm sure that that's something that would be more detailed in the formal final policy.
Wonderful. And give me a second. I'm just kind of scrolling through these because she certainly took her time and put some good thought into this. The initial AB 52 notification of a project should be sent by a certified mail. Is that a requirement?
No, the law doesn't require that. It is something that has been requested by the COI. Recently, we started sending it per their request, certified mail, but, it's not something that we do for other agencies.
Okay. The comment below that, if there is any information about the project available at a certain stage here, and that is the notice of opportunity to consult. It should be shared with the tribe to reduce the need for unnecessarily consultation. And she said, not limited to sacred lands file search results, grading plan, or anticipated depth of grading, historic waterways maps, et cetera, et cetera. Is it our policy to typically share what information we have available at this point?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's always a little bit of a balance of, you have to have a project before you initiate AB 52 consultation. What we normally do is, there's often back and forth. We have some understanding based on other projects in the city, on areas that may be sensitive and so forth. But we try to develop a set of plans to about 30%. So normally when you have plans done, there's a 30%, 60%, and then normally 90 and 100%. So 30% is enough level of detail that you can actually kind of understand what's going on, and we consider it a project at that point, and then initiate the consultation process. So, I think, some of the comments that were provided are, I would consider stylistic preferences, and, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's just, we had tried to get some comments for a number of months and didn't until today. I don't think those are that big of a deal, but, the level of specificity is what we, would like to get to at some point, but, Ms. Westwood is recommending probably a year-long process in developing the formal guidelines, and, we have a lot of projects that, we're kind of trying to get moving, and we think, at least this interim policy would be very helpful. You notice the flow charts that show, it's really helps break down what was adopted in law. So we think, this as an interim step would be helpful. Are the sample forms perfect? I don't know, maybe not. They've been used by a lot of other agencies. I don't think that's something that can't be modified based on requests or whatever, even if the council adopts those policies tonight. These are just examples for us to use and help make sure that we're tracking everything we need to and make sure, we're in compliance.
And then the other piece is around the Caltrans guidance. As I understand it, we are not abiding by Caltrans monitoring rates. We have a different distinction on.
Well, yeah, that isn't included anywhere in the policy, so I'm not sure where that came from. There's a reference to Caltrans policy in there, but not related to pay rates. It's, I believe,
Looking for it.
distinction between tribal consultation and use of tribal experts. So, we are aware that Caltrans has a policy that's recently been updated related to pay of tribal monitoring. And if you were to go back at the one we brought forward in October, that Roseville, they base their tribal monitoring rates on Caltrans policy. I've tried to get the updated policy from Caltrans and have not been successful at this point, so we don't know exactly what that is. But the policy in front of you is not, the rates are not based on Caltrans's either former or recently updated policy.
Excellent, and I think the perspective of a fair and reasonable rate that has some flexibility makes sense. We have 16 culturally affiliated tribes here in Lake County. Having a process like this that gives everyone a clear path and shares what should be expected, I think, I just really appreciate that you guys took the time to put this together. Yeah, I think our ultimate goal here obviously is limiting uncertainty in the process. And there's a lot of variables in this process. And I think we've handled that as best we could. This is a big step forward. So thank you. And hopefully this will help other governments engage with us in an impactful way.
Councilmember Kramer.
Yes, on that pay rate thing, to take that a little further, there's a lot of information out there on market rates for tribal cultural monitors. As Vice Mayor Claffey just said, you know, we've got other tribes in this county that we could also get their, what they're doing as far as pay rates. I don't think we have to depend upon Caltrans's rates at all. I think we need to do a market rate study for that and base our rates on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Sloat.
I concur with Vice Mayor Claffey and Councilman Kramer, that we need to have some flexibility in that, you know, even maybe go to prevailing wage kind of rates and stuff like that. But the other question I have is, did any of the other tribes, Middletown or Elam, responded to any comments on this? No. Okay.
No, I mean, I would just add that, you know, I think it's really important that the other, well, I mean, Vice Mayor Claffey mentioned culturally affiliated tribes. You know, that's something that's a list that's not determined by us, and that's quite a large list. The 3 tribes that commonly are understood to have had historical influence in area that's within the city limits are Middletown, Coy, and Elam. But, you know, for the formal policy, we really think it's important that they engage and are at the table as well. And so, you know, we would certainly put extra effort in making that happen. I have had conversations with the city of Lakeport and the county of Lake about the possibility of just doing a sort of county-wide effort with all the jurisdictions and all of the tribes here in Lake County. I don't know if we'll be able to pull that off, but once we initiate this process, we'll circle back with them and see if that's something that they are interested in doing as well.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one quick one. I think I concur with Vice Mayor Claffey that this is a step forward. I believe Eva Dino believes that. It's not perfect yet, but that's why it's called an interim. And we can move forward to finalize this thing at some time in the future when we're able to nail out all the different pieces of it and make it a good working document.
Councilmember Kramer.
Would it be appropriate maybe to take out the pay rate portion or verbiage at this time and think about overall thinking it should be more of a market rate or based upon the tribes in our county?
That's actually what the policy says, that it's based on a fair and reasonable rate that's consistent with the market rate pay for monitors in Northern California.
Okay.
So I think what you're requesting is
in there.
is consistent with what we have in there.
I mean, if the council wants to provide any additional thought or direction related to how that's established, I mean, you know, we can. I mean, Ms. Westwood has created a little bit of boundaries based on job posting websites and so forth. Now, obviously, we understand that a job posted by a tribe is not like a loaded rate and all that. They're posting a job to hire someone to do the work. You know, we do know some of the other rates throughout the county. So, you know, you can adopt it, you can change it, you can add whatever you want to it. This is just what Ms. Westwood came up with as a starting point.
And perhaps in the final version, it would be more specific rather than this flexible rate at this point. Okay. That's for the council's discretion.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think that would be my preference long-term, is to have an established rate, because, again, variables are variables, and they make processes a little bit sticky. In the short term, I think the way you framed this is certainly sufficient for the time being, so.
Very good. Any other comments, further deliberation? I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their ideas, opinions, and for the staff for putting this together for us for consideration. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the interim tribal consultation standard operating procedure and manual and tribal consultation and monitoring rate policy.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Slotin and a second by Vice Mayor Claffey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or voting, and any nays the same.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you again, all the participants in this. I know, I look forward to seeing the final draft. All right, City Manager, do you have a report?
Just only a couple of things. Not prepared to go over the details right now. We'll do that at our upcoming budget hearings, but we did receive our last quarterly sales tax report. Our sales tax is down 3.3% over a year ago. So, you know, that's not great. It's not horrible. We're not seeing the type of impact that some other areas, in particular Mendocino and Humboldt County, are seeing. In large part, you know, things have just certainly softened with inflation. The amount folks have to spend locally is less, but one of the big influencers is really online sales. You know, it's a complicated formula related to the amount of sales tax that cities and counties receive from online transactions, but it's increased a lot through COVID, of course, and that's really leveled off over the last year and a half or so. But there were a couple of large Amazon distribution centers in other areas of California that came online, and with the current state tax structure, the products that had previously been taxed for the destination of the consumer are now being taxed at the distribution center location. And so that's why you have, you know, essentially 7 communities in the state of California that you know, pull an enormous amount of sales tax based on those online transactions. So, you know, Measure P and Measure V revenues are calculated and taxed a little bit differently than the standard 1%. They're down a little bit less than 1% over a year ago. So the overall picture is fairly stable. Things are softening. We're keeping an eye on it, and we're going to have to be careful on our spending of discretionary revenue over the next year. So most folks that have serious compliance issues have probably already received notice, but our code enforcement division is doing a lot of noticing and enforcement related to weed mitigation throughout the city. Of course, with the weather over the last month or so, there's been very rapid growth. So anyway, just hoping that folks are on it and taking care of the weeds, because, you know, I'm sure we have another serious fire season coming up. Then just the last thing I wanted to mention for the council's awareness, as you're aware, we have been well, towards the end of last year, for a number of months, we're providing police department support for the city of Lakeport. About the end of the year, they were able to bring some new staff online, and there wasn't a need for it. But they have requested some support again over the next couple of months, and so Chief Hobbs is working with officers to see who's interested in signing up for shifts for that. So with that, that's my report.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Overton.
Well, I want to say that our city, our recreation department had a comedy night. It was, I would have liked to see more people there, but I hope that we can do it again because it was a good time. And, you know, I give Tina credit for, you know, trying to get some new things and new ideas coming around. So hopefully the next one, people will come to it. And, but I had a good time. Thought it was great. And then basically only other thing, I will be going to our Cal Cities regional meeting in Fort Bragg on next Friday. So get to see what the laws will bring us, and I'll bring back a report for you guys then.
Thank you for that. I was hoping you'd go. Councilmember Slotin.
Since I was most of the time out of town, I don't have a whole lot to report. I did get appointed to the board of the Yuba College Foundation. It's probably not a very well-known entity that has approximately $10 million in endowment funds that I'm going to try to figure out how much comes back into the county.
Well, thank you for your involvement in that. Councilmember Kramer.
Yes, I just was had the privilege of attending the Lake County Recreation Agency Board meeting in Councilmember Slotin's absence. It was a learning experience for me. I think City Manager Flora was happy that I didn't ask a lot of questions, as he told me afterwards. It was a learning experience. I think it's a very interesting group.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I was at the same meeting. Really interesting group, and I think a high-energy group. It's a group of folks from Lakeport and Lake County, the supervisors and us, who can actually get things done, I hope. Right now, we're looking at a recreation center here in Clearlake. Estimated construction costs are around $16 million. That is part of a much bigger picture for recreation here in Lake County, and I really hope that it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of community support, but it's so important for our children, and it's one of the biggest feedbacks I think we get all the time is that there's not enough for kids to do around here. Finding safe venues where they can have positive interaction with their peers is incredibly important. So thank you for coming, Supervisor Kramer. You're on my basketball team now. Thank you very much. I don't know if you know you volunteered for that, and Derek will get you on my soccer team once everything's opened up. Thank you,
I don't know
Mr.
how
Mayor.
fast I can run anymore, but.
If you put your Rotary hat on, is there anything happening in the
There is.
county area?
There is. So down over at Canocti Harbor, we're having our district conference. This is going to bring together Rotary clubs from all over Northern California. We're going to get together. We're going to talk about different ways that we can help our communities, work on some projects, hopefully to benefit Meals on Wheels. And it's really just a great organization. And this conference is the catalyst for a lot of positive renovations and changes over at Canocti Harbor. It's one of the first big events they're having over there, and we're happy to come and push them forward.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I had no meetings, I have nothing to report. Any future agenda items? Seeing none, I'm going to close this portion of our city council meeting. We will reconvene in 5 minutes after a short break for closed session. Thank you all for coming.